All right. We are live. Let's we'll give it a minute before we really dive in to get a little audience build. I can see we already have a fair amount of people joining. Greetings. Why do I hear myself?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you, Kim. Indeed. All right. Just a second, everyone. Welcome. I am Dan Cohen from Uncaptured Media. And I am just handling a small amount of technical issues. I lost my browser. There we go. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Dan Cohen from Uncaptured Media, and I'm joined by Kim Ives of Haiti Liberté, the English language editor, the editor of the English section of Haiti Liberté, who is, we are, as maybe you know, we are close collaborators on all things Haiti. And we, frankly, are the only independent journalists to be covering what's going on in Haiti. And so we're trying to bring coverage as much as we can. We did a documentary called Another Vision Inside Haiti's Uprising that we filmed in 2021 and we released in 2022. And it kind of tells it really shows the entire background to this moment. So we're, let's see, let me just tweet out that we are live now. We are live, though I guess you can watch on Twitter or YouTube. So a lot happening, even at the moment, outside of Haiti. There's now suggestions that Iran is going to attack Israel in retaliation for the bombing of the Iranian embassy in Syria. So that's a whole nother arena. But we're going to be focusing on Haiti tonight, on a different part of the geopolitical chessboard that is very important, is another major fault line of empire, but does not get the attention. But, as the situation has escalated, as this uprising that we've been documenting for a few years has reached a level of to the point where the U.S. puppet de facto prime minister Ariel Henry was expelled, was given the boot by the armed groups in Haiti at the end of not last month, at the end of February. Now we're into April, so we're gonna explain that. We're gonna talk about a lot. We're gonna talk about basically U.S. plans for the invasion of Haiti. We're trying to cobble together a sort of coalition of the willing, if you get the Bush era reference. And we're going to discuss the nature of the regime that the U.S. is trying to install in Haiti. And we are going to also discuss the armed groups in Haiti, the nature of them, and the leader of the coalition of armed groups, Jimmy Cherizier, also known as Barbecue, who has pledged to resist that invasion, any invasion. So thanks a lot for doing this, Kim. Glad you could be here.
It's me to thank you, Dan. You're a force of nature.
I've definitely been called worse things.
Okay.
So maybe, Kim, you can start us off with the moment. I mean, I think we can just kind of, you and I are pretty much on the same page, so I think we can just kind of tag team and where one falters, the other can pick it up. And everyone, feel free to comment, ask questions. We'll try to interact as much as possible. And there we go. Maybe that's slightly better. And also, feel, super chats, we will definitely go out of our way to make sure to answer. And if you want to contribute anything towards our work, which is, this is all self-funded independent journalism, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/uncaptured, or patreon.com/uncaptured, or on my Substack is just uncaptured.media. Sign up there. So, but without any more shameless self-promotion, so on February 29th, the de facto prime minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, who was anointed by the United States in a single tweet, was basically forced to step down, or though he hasn't officially resigned yet, he was not allowed into the country, and so Washington basically told him, your time is over. So Kim, can you kind of paint the picture to get us up to the moment where we are?
Right. There was sort of a dress rehearsal. I think we'll talk about dress rehearsals a couple of times tonight, but there was sort of a dress rehearsal on February 7th. Ariel Henry had announced on December 21st, 2022, the same day I was, in fact, addressing the UN Security Council about the situation in Haiti, after Ariel Henry had requested on October 9th of that year for UN military force to go in. And the address was that I gave to the UN, I think, went a long way to sort of making them understand that at least Russia and China, that they needed to stop this usage of this international body by the U.S. as camouflage for their third intervention in 3 decades into Haiti. So on that same day, I think, maybe aware that I was going to speak, etc., Ariel announced that, okay, we're going to have this transitional council called the HTC, High Transitional Council. And he announced a former presidential candidate, Mirlan Manigat, and a few others who were going to head it. And he said, on February 7th, 2024, I will step down, we'll have had elections, blah, blah, blah. So sometime during 2023, some of the political class said, hey, he said he was going to step down on the 7th. So this became the big deadline that he had to go. Meanwhile, on November 30th, 2023, Guy Philippe, former rebel leader in 2004 against Jean-Bertrand Aristide, he led the armed rebels in the north. They came down through Haiti, and basically Aristide was kidnapped by the U.S. prior to their arrival in Port-au-Prince. But Guy Philippe was sort of the principal baton, they would say in Creole, or stick that the U.S. used to drive Aristide from power. And he thought, I think he was going to do, like, I don't know, Fidel after the 1959 revolution, just sort of waltz into the capital and take power. But the U.S. had another thing in mind, and they quickly sort of kicked him to the curb and put in their pre-selected IFI, International Financial Institution functionary, a guy called Gerard Latortue, as the prime minister. And he kind of slunk into obscurity in the Haitian countryside in the south for about a decade. During that period, the U.S. mounted several attempts to capture him for supposed drug trafficking, and they hadn't mentioned money laundering yet, but they in fact sent 10 raids out to get him, and he eluded all of them, often just by standing in the crowd of Haitians. The the DEA agents who came were so clueless. In any case, they managed to capture him in 2017, ambush him. He was then senator-elect for the South. He's very popular there. And they took him to Miami, and they said, okay, we're going to charge you with drug trafficking and money laundering. He was told by his lawyer, listen, it's conspiracy to commit money laundering, and you never can beat conspiracy, so you're best just to plead out and make a deal, which is what he did. And he got 7 years, a 9-year sentence, but he, with good conduct to get out after about 7, which is what happened. He got out after 6 years and 8 months. So going back to the thread, November 30th, 2023, he comes back to Haiti. So the political class is building up to say Aristide's got to be out by February 7th. Guy Philippe arrives in Haiti on the 30th, and he's got a silver tongue. He can really talk. He knows how to do it, and he totally has the pulse. He's following Haiti from his prison cells in the United States, and he starts to put out these internet addresses and online addresses, messages, radio interviews, and he does a sort of a truck top tour of Haiti, goes to various key towns, and particularly in the Northeast, where there's a canal being built. We can talk more about that later, which has become very much a sort of a flashpoint of Haitian nationalism because it was self-built by Haitian peasants. Dominicans tried to shut it down. Militia, which is identified with Guy Philippe, was sort of chest bumped with them and drove them back. So they were heroes. He became a hero. And in any case, a big movement sort of built around him. So on February 7th, there was a lot of demonstrating going on in the days before, particularly the 5th, 6th, and 7th. And everybody said, well, the guy's going to have to go. The demonstrations are just so strong. Now, Guy Philippe had said in these various addresses that they were going to do it peacefully through civil disobedience. They were simply going to shut the country down, take the car keys of all the ministers so they couldn't drive to work, occupy offices. He had these kind of, he was using Sri Lanka, the uprising there in 2019, I think it was it? I forget which year it was, but in any case, there was some sort of massive mobilization, pretty much nonviolent, which drove the regime from power. There might have been other factors, but in any case, this was his idea. There was going to be this. There were massive demonstrations, barricades everywhere across the city. But on February 7th, this militia, which its name is BSAP, which stands for Brigade for the Securing of Protected Spaces. They're basically park rangers. This brigade, which mushroomed from 300 or so when it was officially founded in 2017 under Jovenel Moïse, had mushroomed to somewhere between 15 and 50,000, mostly volunteer, mostly unarmed members. But a truck of the BSAP agents was coming down the road into Port-au-Prince, and they were ambushed, machine gunned by Haitian cops. 5 BSAP agents were killed. They thought Guy Philippe was in that car. He was, in fact, a few cars behind. And everything basically ground to a stop. Guy Philippe, who had showed up in Port-au-Prince a day or two earlier, had gone more or less into hiding. And Ariel was there on February 8th, the day Dan and I arrived in Port-au-Prince. So it looked like the movement to uproot Jovenel had more or less had its back broken. And that's when we arrived, and we spent, how many days was it, Dan? 3, 4, 5 days? Maybe 4.
Something. 4 days.
4 days, filming and interviewing BSAP people, Jimmy Cherizier, etc. In any case, it looked like the moment had passed, and we were going to have to wait a while before we saw what happened next. Well, we didn't have to wait long, because essentially the Kenyan High Court had ruled on January 26th that Kenyan police could not go to Haiti to be part of what's called this uh, uh, multinational security support mission, MSS, which is not a UN mission. This is just a UN blessed mission. And the mission is essentially a US mission using mercenaries in the form of other nations, poor nations, police forces. And the Kenyans were going to lead it. But the Kenyan court said, no, they can't lead it. They can't do it unless there's a bilateral agreement between the two countries. And anyway, this was impossible because there was no elected government to sign such an agreement, and there's no parliament to ratify such an agreement. But they just charged ahead with it anyway. And Ariel Henry, after going to a CARICOM conference, flew across the Atlantic to Kenya to sign. He didn't sign it, in fact. Who signed it? It was I think it was the environment minister, in fact, or the putative environment. I mean, it was some really marginal ministry who signed it because he couldn't for some reason. I mean, it's funny how they can trample the law, and yet they'll observe one little curlicue of it, and think that will somehow fool people. In any case, during this period when he was over there, Jimmy Cherizier, who is again the subject of our 2022 film, Another Vision, said, this is the moment to act. Ariel's out of the country. He's doing a complete outrageous act of going to sign this accord that nobody wants, nobody agrees with, and he's not coming back in. And he had launched 6 months earlier, back in the summer and September of 2023, right about the time that Dan and I were doing another shoot in Haiti, a thing called Vivre Ensemble, which means live together in Creole. And the purpose of that was to unite not only his federated gangs, which is an anti-crime federation called the G9 Family and Allies, mess with one, you mess with all, revolutionary forces of the G9 Family and Allies. But he was uniting with the GPEP, which was a confederation of criminal gangs, or mostly criminal gangs, which were most of them, again, in the service of the oligarchy and were being used to fight him and his revolutionary project. So he said, the only way I'm going to be able to prevail against Ariel Henry is to unite with these guys, And we asked him about this back in that early February interviews we did after the failed February 7th uprooting. And we said, you still think you can do this Vivre Something? And he said, it's hard. We've had setbacks. It hasn't been working, but I still think we can. Still think that's our only choice. Well, sure enough, it worked. It did work, at least in this first little test. The gangs went out. They basically shut down the airport. They started to attack the police stations in government offices. And this mobilized people in the north who also shut down the airport up there. And as a result, Ariel Henry has not come back. And so here we are today. The U.S. has had to scramble, Blinken had to run and make an emergency meeting. They called it emergency, using CARICOM blackface, the same way they're using Kenyan blackface to disguise the U.S. intervention militarily. They have to use CARICOM, primarily Guyana, their new number one agent in the hemisphere, Jamaica, who's always been a willing sidekick, and Barbados, Mia Motley, um, to more or less hold this meeting. A lot of CARICOM has not agreed with this, I should say. But anyway, they got these three to more or less hold the meeting under CARICOM's banner. And they appointed another government, which was made up principally of their preferred alternative, which is called the Montana Accord, with a few other people. But clearly they were hoping with this 9-member commission, 7 of them voting, 2 of them observer, in other words, shall we say, window dressing, religious and civil society sectors. But, you know, it was a completely ill-engineered, poorly engineered solution, because they basically took the very dysfunctional Haitian political class and condensed it down into an even more dysfunctional 7 voting member body. And they've, had people swapped in, swapped out. They're fighting among each other, all vying. Each one wants to have their candidate be the presidential candidate, because they're going to nominate this presidential commission a president and a prime minister. So there's just an incredible amount of what they call in Haiti the panier crab, the crab basket. The crabs are fighting and climbing and rolling and wrestling. Anyway, so that's where we are. Meanwhile, it's race. The U.S. Washington is racing to get their proxy force on the ground, but it's a problem. They're having problems in Kenya. They're having problems in Benin, where they're also getting troops, in Chad, where they're also getting troops. The Canadians just flew down to Jamaica to train some Bahamians, and who else? Barbados. I don't have it in front of me, but a few other Caribbean countries. So, they're just totally on their back foot racing. But the problem is, the force on the ground right now is Jimmy Cherizier's Vivre Ensemble. Meanwhile, Guy Philippe has been making, beautiful proclamations from his base in the rural South, and a lot of the country is clamoring for Guy Philippe to be president. Jimmy Cherizier says he has no problem with Guy Philippe, that he feels they have the same vision. So that's where we are. It's really a race, if I can sum up all this long background. It's really a race between the U.S. with its 7-headed monster that it's created, that's rejected by the people, and backed by this blackface mercenary force, against Guy Philippe and Jimmy Cherizier, who are also seeking to take power. But basically, the ball is on the rim. Power is in the air, shall we say, is up in the air, up for grabs. And who is going to get it? Is it going to be Cherizier and Guy Philippe and the Haitian people, or at least those that support those 2 forces? Or is it going to be the U.S. and its political class allies, which will essentially be the continuation of the status quo? So Haiti is in the opening moves, shall we say, of what I call a revolutionary process. A lot of people on the left, I think, take at least so-called left, take issue with that, because they have a very set schema, maybe, of how they see a revolution happening. But to me, if you've been following closely, this is what we're having. We are having an uprising of Haiti's underclass. They are armed, they are angry, they have agency, and as we used to say in football, agile, mobile, hostile. They are not to be trifled with.
All right. Thanks, Kim, so that kind of brings us up to the sort of the current moment. I want to tease a little bit of that out and show some of the work we've been doing, I think it will help people understand. So basically, sort of summarize, you have on one hand the two main uh, federations of armed groups that had been fighting for years: the G9, led by Jimmy Cherizier Barbecue, and the JPEP, which was a criminal group, united. Jimmy Cherizier, all the time that he was fighting against them, he was saying, guys, let's stop fighting and let's turn our weapons against the oligarchs. Let's have a revolution instead of fighting each other. So he was always very reticent to fight. And then you have this other BASAP group, which has become very much kind of the pride of Haiti in a way, because of what they did with this canal along the Dominican border, where they basically confronted Dominican soldiers. And so suddenly they went from a very small marginal force to now they're anywhere between 15 and 25 or 30,000 strong, and sort of a ragtag group. So you have this kind of, and they've pledged to join the People's Revolution, to accompany the People's Revolution.
Mhm.
And Ariel Henry was trying to dispose of them, but he had no legal authority to do so, and they rejected it. And so you have these kind of two phenomenon, and then you have the U.S. trying to race in to get this foreign invasion, and is trying to cobble together these groups, and is now trying to get a new sort of regime to to basically be the face of it, to try to legitimize it. So it's just not so naked. So I want to show this whole concept of vivre ensemble, which is the formerly rival armed groups, the Anti-Crime Federation of the G9 family and allies, or the Revolutionary Forces of the G9 family and allies. Mess with one, mess with all is their official formal name. That joined with the criminal groups that have basically, the cardinal rule, and this is what Jimmy Cherizier told us, is the cardinal rule is no kidnapping. So basically, they have to renounce their, if they're going to be criminals, they can't really be part of this. How much power does he have to enforce it? It's not exactly, that's kind of to be determined in a way. But what we did see last week, when this YouTuber, Addison Malouf, who goes by the moniker on YouTube, or on Twitch, or wherever he streams, Your Fellow Arab, he went to Haiti a couple of weeks ago in order to interview Barbecue, and he flew into Cap-Haïtien in the north, and then he posted a video where he said he was gonna drive down to Port-au-Prince to interview Barbecue, which is just a completely insane thing to do. It's obviously he has no idea what he's doing. You're basically guaranteed to get shaken down or even kidnapped on the way, and that's exactly what happened. So this guy, Lamont Saint-Jour, who is the head of a group called the 400 Maozo, one of the most notorious kidnapping rings, criminal groups, that had joined Vivre Ensemble, so ostensibly had renounced, not going to be involved in crime anymore. They kidnapped him. He wandered into their territory, like basically a very foolish idea. He wandered into their territory, got kidnapped, and then when we found out, he finally he was able to use his phone from time to time. He was in touch with his friend, another streamer. They went public with it, and then as soon as we saw, this was last Friday morning.
I should interject. They went public after some ransom had been paid,
okay,
and he wasn't released, and then they said, okay,
right. So basically, he paid a ransom of something like $40,000 to Lamont Saint-Jour, was not released, and then decided to go public to try to create international pressure. I woke up at 6:30 in the morning on Friday, saw the situation, called Kim, we called Cherizier, and he immediately got on the issue and said, send me whatever information you have. He immediately called Lamont Saint-Jean and put out a message to the Vivre Ensemble guys and said, what's going on here? Kidnapping is not allowed. Anyone know what this is? And, so a day later, 24 hours later, this guy, Your Fellow Arab, was released by Lamont Saint-Jean with no further ransom paid. So it shows the sort of, the power, to whatever degree it is, that Cherizier wields inside Vivre Ensemble.
And according to Addison Pierre Malouf, he said that he would wage war if he wasn't released.
Right. That's what Cherizier said to Lamont Saint-Jean. We don't know exactly what he said. That's according to this guy, so we don't know. However, Cherizier has always been very anti-kidnapping. He's never tolerated it. And he fought against kidnappers for many years. And so now that he's in an alliance with this group that carried out a kidnapping, he flexed his muscles in some way and compelled he compelled Lamont Saint-Jean to release him. So it sort of shows the dynamic that obviously this Vivre Ensemble coalition is not perfect, but it is certainly progress from where things would have been, say, a year ago, where Cherizier would have had no leverage to tell someone to release a kidnapping victim, and it didn't. With once he found out, there was no more ransom involved. So I would say that's a positive step. So all of that to say, this is what the Vivre Ensemble coalition is, and what they succeeded in doing, and what I think is changing the minds of Haitians in Haiti, is the fact that they gave the boot to Ariel Henry, the de facto prime minister, who was universally reviled and was imposed by the U.S. in a completely anti-democratic process of the U.S. simply anointing him by tweet. And everyone wanted to get rid of him because the condition, the situation of the country just continued to worsen and worsen. So all of a sudden, these monster gangs, who some of which have been terrorizing the population, are suddenly doing the will of the people. So things are starting to look a little bit different. But I want to show this clip this is actually from an episode, a long report, a new episode of our documentary, Another Vision, that we're working on, that I've been working on all day. And if we weren't doing this live stream, I'd probably be working on it right now, but we're trying to get out imminently. Not going to announce a date yet. But I want to show this clip that we did release last week, where you see, this is from August 2023, when Kim and I went down to Haiti to continue our investigative work. And this is a few days before they officially announced this group, Vivre Ensemble. And so, hang on, let me just get this. No, there we go. Okay. So who you see on the right of your screen, of course, is Cherizier, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, and then on the left is a guy named what's his real name? Toto's real name?
Toto Alexandre is
Marc-Andre, right? Marc-Andre, aka Toto Alexandre, who is the spokesperson for the Bel Air neighborhood. Bel Air and Cherizier's Lower Delma neighborhood are up against each other, and they had been fighting for years. And if you watch our documentary, Another Vision, you'll see that Toto Alexandre is one of the antagonists, who's denouncing Barbecue, who's saying, the people don't want a revolution. Barbecue's out of his mind, all these things. And now we go down there, and Toto Alexandre has changed his tune. Now he's speaking in very strong anti-imperialist tones. So I want to show this clip so you get a sense of what this piece is, what the Vivre Ensemble coalition is, at least from these two.
Et que nous disons, bon, on met tête nous ensemble pour ne pas quitter Tinec faire nous mouvement encore, pour nous garder comme nous capables de délivrer pays. Et peut-être ça l'envoie message ça va le monde entier. La paix ça qu'on la paix.
Soit disant, il y a des gens qui disent tout et sinon même pas connaître tout. Il y a des gens qui disent tout oui, la paix ça c'est quoi nous qui la même. N'a dit tout le monde non, nous pas faire fin nous dans goumé. Nous pas faire fin nous dans bataille. C'est pour ça bon Dieu parle là nous avec maman spirituelle nous obligés font on tabe rond pour tout petit pays à Kachita ensemble pour nous parler pour nous définir. Même pas qu'on personne monde soit disant bandit, si me dit au monde bandit. Mais c'est l'état placé pour cadre monde. Voilà c'est le deuxième bagarre. Ça vient arriver moi personnellement nous te kan goumé face avec TBG nous vraiment goumé. Mais là, on regarde le bac mener nous à quel côté, bac mener nous nulle part. Nous obligés font chita parler ensemble pour nous faire retarder. Regardez qui ça regarde. Nous obligés ouais côté nous voulons aller, côté nous voulons. Qui est qui pas comprendre ça qu'a fait là. Qui est qui ignorer ça qu'a fait là. Mais un jour bon Dieu mettait à une réalité.
So there you see the what these guys decided between themselves, that fighting is not getting them anywhere. They're the only people that are being hurt are the residents of the neighborhood. No one is gaining anything, and we should be clear that the Toto is not much of a fighter himself. He is he's the spokesman for the neighborhood. The leader of the armed group in Bel Air is a guy named Kempes Sanon, who has been a very notorious kidnapper. He actually escaped.
Convicted kidnapper.
I'm sorry?
Convicted kidnapper.
Yes, a convicted kidnapper where he escaped from prison, and I believe killed the warden on the way out. This is so it's a very there's a lot of contradictions and it's very tenuous here. But I mean, I'll say this: these years that I've been working with Kim to make this documentary, and we've been interviewing Cherizier, he's saying, I got to ally with these guys. I don't have any other choice. We got to make an alliance. And we were very skeptical of it. How do you make an alliance with criminals? But he's actually having a fair amount of success at this point in convincing them to stop carrying out these kinds of crimes, those kidnappings.
And if I can jump in there, Dan, with one thing, is you have to also look at the nature of this coalition, because these other gangs that were doing kidnapping and crimes, in fact, have more money because of their kidnapping, more guns, more ammunition, and more soldiers than Cherizier. So he's a little bit, a mouse directing elephants.
He's the underdog.
He's the underdog. But he has the media attention. He has a lot of guts to stand up. He's got charisma to spare.
Conviction. And
he's very articulate. And so they've come to see that he's become some kind of champion, some kind of Robin Hood champion. And so to some extent, they may calculate, well, if things go forward and, the Marines come in here, we're all going to be, messed, destroyed probably, one. And two, they might have a lot of money, but there's not much they can do. They're kind of stuck where they are, maybe importing, girls and beer and video equipment to, do just little parties. But, it's not much of a life. You can't really enjoy your ill-gotten gains. So they may be looking for some kind of way out. And they see, okay, this is it. Maybe we can get absolution. We can do. And Guy Philippe, who has been a law and order guy and was essentially telling them during his speeches leading up to February 7th, listen, lay down your arms. We'll give you an amnesty. We'll let you go if you, go quietly into the night and stop causing headaches. So, and this has been a little bit of Cherizier's message too, just saying, listen, you guys, stop it. We don't want to fight among each other. Don't do things against the people, and let's point our guns not at each other, but at the bourgeoisie and by extension, the imperialists who are coming after us. So it's an interesting dynamic. Cherizier has the weight morally and politically, but they have the weight in terms of ammo, guns, and money.
I mean, I think another aspect of that is a lot of the dirt, or a lot of the dirty, the crimes that those groups committed they were doing it because they were paid by the oligarchs. So when they would attack a neighborhood or go burn something down or burn a business, they weren't just doing it for no reason. It was very strategic. Cherizier, in our documentary, he talks about an